Come with me today as we explore Puerto Plata, Dominican Republic.
If Puerto Plata is on your cruise itinerary, you are in luck because it's home to not one, but two great cruise ports. Amber Cove, which is primarily served by Carnival Cruise Line, and Holland, and this is where I'm at today and what you see here in the beginning of this video. But there's also Taino Bay. I do have a separate video on Taino Bay, so if you're visiting there, make sure to check that video out as well. Now, regardless of which cruise port you're visiting on your stop to Puerto Plata, you'll find that both of the cruise ports have a lot to do right at the port. So if you're looking to save money and not buy a cruise line excursion, there's a lot you can do at the port area themselves. Now, Taino Bay does tend to have a little bit more at the cruise port. It is a newer cruise port than Amber Cove, but both are really great. At Taino Bay, you will find a pretty expansive port area with lots of souvenir shops, tons of restaurants, a really awesome coffee shop, and a really great free pool area, even a small lazy river. They also have a Monkeyland type of experience in the cruise port area, but that does cost extra. Here at Amber Cove, they have an aqua zone, which I'll show you here in a moment, which isn't as expansive as the one at Taino Bay, but it's still pretty cool. There are a lot of free amenities and things that you can buy at an additional cost. If you take a look at this little port map here, you'll see some of the things that you can do. A few of the amenities at Amber Cove that you can engage in that cost extra include things like aqua bikes, a zip line, and water slides. Amber Cove does have a kind of long pier, but they have these little pedal bikes where locals will transport cruisers from the cruise ship to the duty-free store. This is free, but tips are expected. Now, a lot of folks want to know if they can walk to the different places in Puerto Plata from the cruise ports. The answer is, if you dock at Taino Bay, yes, there are lots of things that are walkable from the cruise port. Amber Cove, however, unfortunately, that is not the case. You really can't walk to anywhere in Puerto Plata if you are docked at Amber Cove. So if your goal is to get outside of the cruise port area and explore the city itself, you're going to have to either buy a cruise line excursion, do something on your own, take a taxi, or do what I do, which is hire a private driver. Taxis in Puerto Plata are surprisingly expensive, especially compared to other Caribbean cruise ports like Cozumel, for example. So getting around via taxi is usually a pretty expensive way to go. But if you book a private driver, you can explore the area on your own time, at your own pace, doing what you want and going where you want to go. And it ends up being about the same cost, if not cheaper, than taking a taxi, especially if you have a group of more than 2 people. If you decide to do an excursion, make sure you know the pros and cons of booking a cruise line excursion versus going out and doing it on your own independently. Because if you do an independent excursion, while it'll save you money and give you more options and flexibility, the cruise ship will not wait for you if you run late, whereas if you book a cruise line excursion, it will. If you're docked at Amber Cove, once you exit the duty-free store, right outside of the area here and to the left are the excursion meeting points. If you hang a right, that will get you into the aqua zone, which is free for cruisers. Some of the most popular destinations in Puerto Plata include Monkeyland, but that's a little bit of a drive away from the cruise port. So if you want to do Monkeyland, which is great, I've done it, I encourage you to do a cruise line excursion. Damahagua Falls is also pretty fun, but it's not for those that are not somewhat physically fit, in the downtown area, which I'll show you in a little bit because I explored that on this visit here. Now, as we enter the aqua zone, you'll see that it's a pretty expansive area. There is a sky bar over here to the left, and then if you go straight ahead, you will find the pool. There are a couple of bars and restaurants over in this area, and they do seem to be pretty well liked by cruisers. As you enter into the aqua zone of Amber Cove, overhead you'll find the zip lines, and again, that is an additional cost. And over to the left are some water slides, which also come at an additional cost. The loungers again here are free, and they are available on a first come, first serve basis. Make sure you bring your towels from the cruise ship because unlike some other cruise lines like Royal Caribbean, Carnival and Holland do not provide towels typically to cruisers outside of the ship. They also have some overwater cabanas that you probably saw earlier when we were walking down the pier, and those come at a rental cost as well, and those do tend to be pretty expensive, but they do provide a much more fun, exclusive, and private experience. There are other random things here and there at Amber Cove that come at additional cost, things like fish pedicures. Now, if you do visit Amber Cove, make sure you note they do have a souvenir passport stamp, but this is a souvenir stamp. I always encourage cruisers to avoid doing this. Of course, get a stamp on a piece of paper, but don't actually stamp your passport with it because it can invalidate your passport. Aquazone is located on the right side of the cruise port area. Over on the left, on the extreme end, is the transportation pavilion. There you'll find a car rental location and also all the waiting vans and buses for cruisers that are taking cruise line sponsored excursions. If you decide to go out on your own with an independent excursion, which is what I did on this day, and specifically I booked a private driver, you'll have to walk all the way through here across the street and up a hill to exit the cruise terminal area. And this is what that area looks like. It is safe and it is secure, but once you exit the cruise area, you'll find a pretty busy highway, so just be careful of oncoming traffic. There you'll find awaiting cars and vans of private excursion providers and private drivers waiting for their passengers. My go-to private transportation company is called Happy Driver Dominican, and I will put that link in my description in case you want to get pricing or check them out, because I can't say enough great things about them. They're always on time, the drivers are friendly and speak fluent English, and their vehicles are always new and they're air conditioned, and they even provide drinks and an ability to charge your phone. I've explored Puerto Plata pretty much every way. I've done cruise line excursions, I've done private excursions, I've done private drivers, I've stayed at port both at Taino Bay and at Amber Cove, and for me, by far, a private driver is my favorite way to explore. It ends up being more affordable since, as I mentioned, taxis in Puerto Plata are pretty darn expensive, and I love being able to explore what I want, when I want, at my own pace, and not being herded with a bunch of other people like cattle. Now, on this day, I was traveling with someone who had never been to Puerto Plata before, so I had to take him to some of the big sites. That includes the downtown area, which is great because everything is located by one another. First, we stopped at Umbrella Alley, which really is a great photo op and an Instagram-worthy location, but it's kind of a quick hit. It's really neat to see. There are some shops and restaurants, but I usually don't like to spend more than about 10 minutes here. Now, right around the corner from Umbrella Alley is the Pink Alley, or Paseo de Doña Blanca. Now, like Umbrella Alley, this is a great Instagram-worthy location, but it does get really crowded, and it's kind of one of those quick hits. It's great to stop by and see, to get a photo, to understand the significant history of it, but then you kind of keep it moving. And that's why I like traveling on my own or with a private driver, because these are the kind of things that I like to visit quickly, but then keep going. But then I'm not stuck with a tour group and have to wait beyond the time that I want to stay there. And also located in this area are a couple of Amber museums, which are worth a visit. Now, the great thing if you're porting at Taino Bay is that you can walk easily to all of these locations featured here from the cruise port area. Amber Cove, you cannot. You either have to do an excursion, book a private driver, or take a taxi. Up from the Pink Alley and Umbrella Alley is the town square area, where you can buy a coconut, which is pretty cheap. It's only $2, and a fun experience. You can see the cathedral, and you can even buy seed from a local vendor and feed the pigeons. I recently visited a different time with my 11-year-old daughter, and this by far of all the things we did was her favorite part of Puerto Plata. And like the coconuts, it was a cheap experience, only $1 to $2 for the seed. Here you'll find the cathedral area, and you can go inside if you want. And then there is this little awning area, which is just really nice for a great photo op. Otherwise, there's really not much to see or do here. It's just a fun place to explore, and there are some restaurants, coffee shops, and souvenir shops as well in this area. As for beaches, if you dock at Taino Bay, you can walk to Casita Rica, which is the beach you see over here. Or for me, I like to go a little bit further out and visit Playa del Poblito, which I find much cleaner, less polluted, and much more pleasant overall. It's worth the drive.